cost to install a chandelier, dimmer, medallion, and light lift hoist in a cathedral-type ceiling around 13 feet high can vary significantly based on several factors. These factors include the location, size, and complexity of the chandelier, height of the ceiling, accessibility of the ceiling, and availability of materials. Firstly, the location plays a crucial role. Prices tend to be higher in larger cities or areas with a high cost of living, such as the North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area. The increased overhead costs for businesses in these areas, including rent, insurance, and labor, often translate to higher prices for services. Secondly, the size and complexity of the chandelier directly influence the installation cost. A larger, more elaborate chandelier will require more time, effort, and potentially more specialized tools to install safely and correctly. This is due to the increased weight, intricate design, and the need for precise alignment and wiring. Thirdly, the height of the ceiling is a significant consideration. A 15-foot cathedral-type ceiling requires additional equipment, such as scaffolding or a specialized lift to reach safely. This adds to the labor costs and the overall complexity of the project. Furthermore, the accessibility of the ceiling is another important factor. If the ceiling is difficult to access due to obstacles, tight spaces, or other architectural features, it may take more time to complete the installation, increasing the labor costs. Finally, the availability and cost of materials can impact the overall price. The dimmer, medallion, and light lift hoist all contribute to the total cost of the project, and fluctuations in the prices of these materials can affect the final estimate. A reasonable price range for a job like this, considering all these factors, typically falls between $500 and $800. However, this is just an estimate, and the actual cost may vary depending on the specific circumstances of the job. To provide a more detailed understanding of the cost breakdown, consider the following components. Chandelier installation typically ranges from $200 to $400. This includes the labor costs associated with safely mounting the chandelier, connecting the wiring, and ensuring that it is properly balanced and aligned. The actual cost within this range depends on the size and complexity of the chandelier, as well as the height and accessibility of the ceiling. Dimmer installation usually costs between $50 and $150. This involves installing the dimmer switch, connecting it to the existing wiring, and testing it to ensure that it functions correctly. The cost can vary depending on the type of dimmer switch, the complexity of the wiring, and any modifications that may be needed to the electrical box. Medallion installation typically ranges from $50 to $150. This includes installing the medallion around the base of the chandelier, which can enhance its aesthetic appeal and provide a decorative touch. The cost can vary depending on the size and material of the medallion, as well as the complexity of the installation. The light lift hoist typically costs between $100 and $200. This includes installing the hoist mechanism, which allows the chandelier to be lowered for cleaning or maintenance. The cost can vary depending on the type of hoist, the weight capacity, and the complexity of the installation. To better justify the price to the customer, it is helpful to provide a detailed breakdown of these costs, demonstrating that the estimate is fair and reasonable. Explaining the factors that influence each component of the job can also help the customer understand the value of the services being provided. For example, when discussing the chandelier installation cost, you could explain that the price includes the labor and equipment needed to safely mount the chandelier, connect the wiring, and ensure that it is properly balanced and aligned. You can also highlight any special precautions or techniques that will be used to protect the ceiling and surrounding fixtures. Similarly, when discussing the dimmer installation cost, you can explain that the price includes the cost of the dimmer switch, as well as the labor needed to install it and connect it to the existing wiring. You can also explain the benefits of using a dimmer switch, such as energy savings and increased control over the lighting. When discussing the medallion installation cost, you can explain that the price includes the cost of the medallion, as well as the labor needed to install it and ensure that it is properly aligned and secured. You can also explain the aesthetic benefits of adding a medallion to the chandelier. Finally, when discussing the light lift hoist cost, you can explain that the price includes the cost of the hoist mechanism, as well as the labor needed to install it and ensure that it is properly functioning. You can also explain the convenience and safety benefits of using a light lift hoist, particularly for chandeliers that are difficult to reach. It is also important to consider any potential challenges or complications that may arise during the installation process. For example, if the existing wiring is outdated or damaged, it may need to be replaced, which would add to the overall cost. Similarly, if the ceiling is not structurally sound, it may need to be reinforced to support the weight of the chandelier, which would also add to the cost. Communicating these potential challenges to the customer upfront can help to avoid any surprises or misunderstandings later on. When providing the estimate, it is also important to be clear about what is included in the price. For example, you should specify whether the price includes the cost of materials, such as the dimmer, medallion, and light lift hoist, or whether these items will be billed separately. You should also specify whether the price includes any necessary permits or inspections. By being transparent and upfront about all aspects of the job, you can build trust with the customer and increase the likelihood of securing the project. Additionally, it is helpful to provide the customer with a written estimate that clearly outlines the scope of the work, the materials to be used, and the total cost. This will provide the customer with a clear record of the agreement and can help to prevent any disputes or misunderstandings later on. When preparing the estimate, it is also important to consider the competition. Research the prices that other electricians in the area are charging for similar services and try to offer a competitive price. However, it is also important to avoid undercutting your prices to the point where you are not making a reasonable profit. Remember that you are providing a valuable service and that your prices should reflect the expertise, experience, and quality of your work. In addition to the factors discussed above, there are a few other considerations that can impact the price of a chandelier installation. For example, if the customer requests any additional services, such as the installation of additional lighting fixtures or the repair of existing electrical problems, this will add to the overall cost. Similarly, if the customer requires the work to be done on short notice or outside of normal business hours, this may also increase the price. It is also important to consider the potential for unexpected costs or delays. For example, if you encounter any unforeseen problems during the installation process, such as hidden wiring or structural issues, this may require additional time and labor to resolve, which would add to the cost. Similarly, if there are any delays in obtaining the necessary permits or materials, this may also impact the timeline and the overall cost of the project. To mitigate the risk of unexpected costs or delays, it is helpful to conduct a thorough inspection of the job site before providing the estimate. This will allow you to identify any potential challenges or complications and to factor them into the price. It is also important to maintain open communication with the customer throughout the project, keeping them informed of any progress, challenges, or changes to the original estimate. By being proactive and transparent, you can build trust with the customer and ensure that the project is completed to their satisfaction. Finally, it is important to remember that the price of a chandelier installation is just one factor that customers consider when choosing an electrician. Other factors, such as reputation, experience, and customer service, can also play a significant role in the decision-making process. Therefore, it is important to focus on providing excellent service and building strong relationships with your customers. By doing so, you can increase your chances of securing future projects and building a successful business. When determining the final price, consider the following steps. Firstly, thoroughly assess the scope of the work, including the size and complexity of the chandelier, the height and accessibility of the ceiling, and any potential challenges or complications. Secondly, research the cost of materials such as the dimmer, medallion, and light lift hoist, and factor these costs into the estimate. Thirdly, determine your labor costs, taking into account the time required to complete the installation, the number of electricians needed, and your hourly rate. Fourthly, consider any additional costs such as permits, inspections, or travel expenses, and factor these costs into the estimate. Fifthly, research the prices that other electricians in the area are charging for similar services and try to offer a competitive price. Sixthly, provide the customer with a written estimate that clearly outlines the scope of the work, the materials to be used, and the total cost. Seventhly, be prepared to explain the estimate to the customer and answer any questions they may have. Eighthly, be flexible and willing to negotiate the price if necessary, but avoid undercutting your prices to the point where you are not making a reasonable profit. Ninthly, maintain open communication with the customer throughout the project, keeping them informed of any progress, challenges, or changes to the original estimate. Tenthly, ensure that the project is completed to the customer's satisfaction and that they are happy with the final result. In summary, pricing a chandelier installation requires careful consideration of various factors, including location, chandelier complexity, ceiling height and accessibility, and material costs. Providing a detailed breakdown of the costs and maintaining open communication with the customer can help to justify the price and ensure a successful project. Remember to factor in potential challenges and delays, and to offer a competitive price while maintaining a reasonable profit margin. Focus on providing excellent service and building strong relationships with your customers to increase your chances of securing future projects. For instance, the North Texas area around Dallas-Fort Worth is known for higher costs of living, meaning services like electrical work will often be priced higher than in more rural areas. The intricate designs of some chandeliers necessitate more time and skill, driving up labor costs. Reaching a 15-foot cathedral ceiling safely requires specialized equipment like scaffolding or lifts, contributing to expenses. Limited access to the ceiling due to architectural constraints further complicates the installation, impacting the labor hours. Finally, the selection of a high-quality dimmer, a decorative medallion, and a reliable light lift hoist all add to the material expenses. A detailed breakdown, as previously mentioned, is the chandelier installation, ranging from $200 to $400. This includes safe mounting, wiring connections, and ensuring balance. Dimmer installation spans $50 to $150, encompassing the dimmer switch and its correct wiring. The decorative medallion installation ranges from $50 to $150, depending on size and material. Lastly, the light lift hoist installation typically costs $100 to $200, ensuring smooth lowering and raising for maintenance. Remember, clear communication, a detailed written estimate, and competitive pricing are crucial for securing the project and satisfying the customer. It is important to consider local pricing standards, own overhead costs, and the value you bring through expertise and service.